Okay, I am Catherine Barnett, and I will be interviewing Marissa Chapin for our job at our school for an SLP position. So, Marissa, why should we hire you?
Well, I have 5 years of school-based experience as an ASL, and I have worked hard during those years to push myself to be the best therapist that I could be. And during those years, I was actively involved with my supervisor, and I asked questions, and I observed her doing therapy. I was also able to have 7 different placements in graduate school with a variety of settings included in those. So I feel as though I have a well-rounded experience, and I could, give the school district a new perspective.
Okay. Where would you like to be in your career 5 years from now?
5 years from now, well, I would like to still be working in a school system. I enjoy having the hours that the schools do provide, and I will be working hard to provide the best therapy that I can for my students and researching all that I can to be the best that I can.
Okay. So, what is your greatest failure and what did you learn from it?
Well, in my years as an ASL, I worked with a group of students that had severe disabilities. And at that time, I wasn't comfortable working with that population. It was my first year, and they are nonverbal. And I felt as though when I was with them, I didn't give them enough therapy to be beneficial for them. And I feel as though that was a failure. It's my job to provide the best therapy that I can, but I didn't feel comfortable enough at the time. And it is difficult to find what works for each child. And the classroom has 8 kids, and I also had my own caseload that I helped my supervisor with, which was about 50 kids in the regular education setting. So it was just really hard to give those 8 children their time that they needed individually to help them benefit as best as possible.
Tell me about a time where you had to deal with conflict on the job.
Well, recently there was conflict at my last job. There was a therapist who no longer worked at the schools, but they still had contacts at the school district. And she was talking about a fellow therapist and stating how that therapist was miserable in her job in every position, available, which wasn't true. And I happened to know both of the parties involved, and I felt as though that it should have been left alone at the time. I don't think that conflict resolution should have been made. There wasn't anything that either therapist could do except for, express themselves and how they felt. But I did feel as though if this were to happen again, the therapist should speak to the other one and let the district know what was being said, because that could affect the other therapist's job later on, because she didn't say the things that were being said.
Okay. What salary are you seeking?
For my salary, I would like to be in the same range as a fellow therapist within the district with similar education and similar years of experience. And you guys do have your salary schedule online, and I looked that up, and it's about $68,000 to $71,000 a year for a 201-day contract.
If I were to give you the salary you requested, but let you write your own job description for the next year, what would it say?
For my job description, I would include that I would provide services to 2 schools within the district of about 80 to 90 kids. I would conduct thorough evaluations and complete their evaluations in a timely manner with their evaluation reports as well. And I will complete Medicaid billing within 1 week of services. I will maintain 1/3 of my ASHA CEUs per year to stay in date with current therapy techniques.
Okay. What kind of goals would you have in mind if you got this job?
My goals for this job would be to work with my students and provide the best therapy that I can. I want to complete thorough evaluations and reports. And I want to integrate with other therapists within the district to help form a more cohesive speech therapy group.
Okay. If I were to ask your last supervisor to provide you additional training or exposure, what would she suggest?
My last supervisor would probably ask me to attend conflict resolution seminars because she felt as though when she was in my position, she didn't have that experience. And when there was a conflict, she didn't know how to handle that. So she would wish that I had that experience. And she would also want more exposure for me to work with students who are on the spectrum, as well as those that are considered to be medically fragile, to gain more experience in how to work with those kids, how to evaluate those children, and how to write goals for those children.
What do you see yourself doing within the first 30 days of this job?
Well, within the first 30 days, I plan to find all of my children on my caseload and examine their IEPs to determine how many minutes they get per week and what areas they are seen for. Having that information will allow me to create my schedule for my students. And once this is completed, I will begin therapy once school starts. And I will work hard to get a baseline for each student that will allow me to give them the best therapy that I can, working on those targeted areas that they did have difficulties with.
How would you go about establishing your credibility quickly with the team?
I feel as though establishing credibility is done through actions. I would prove that I am a good therapist by working with my children and using techniques that have been proven to work. I will work with other therapists and hopefully get a more cohesive work environment that will help all of us feel more comfortable talking to one another about therapy and our struggles that we have in the workforce. There are therapists who enjoy doing articulation therapy more than language therapy, and vice versa. And if we were able to talk to one another, we could help each other be better therapists.
Tell me about your proudest achievement.
Well, prior to getting into graduate school, my biggest achievement was getting into graduate school. For now, I would say probably graduating with my master's and completing my CFY year, because I worked really hard to get through my program and to fulfill my duties as a CF. And now that I have my Cs, I feel like that is accomplishment in of itself.
Give examples of ideas you've had or implemented.
During my last year at my previous job, I was in charge of creating therapy activities for a group session that was used with our medically fragile students. And I tried to make sure that the activity was relevant to their curriculum because they did use a specific curriculum that had different themes for each week. And I tried to make sure that we touched on literacy skills weekly because I know that there's a possibility that those students don't get a whole lot of literacy in their classroom and at home. And then I would also choose a craft that went along with the story as well as the curriculum. And when we were doing this, it was used with an SLP, a CODA, and myself as an ASL.
What 3 character traits would your friends use to describe you?
That would depend on which friend we talk to. Most of my friends would say that I'm funny and I'm kind. And more than all, like I'm giving. I try to always make sure that everyone is happy, and if they're having a bad day, I'll bake and try to make them happy with food.
Okay. With your eyes closed, tell me step by step how to tie my shoes.
Do I have to actually close my eyes? All right. So I would, if your shoe is already on, grab the 2 laces, pull them up tight to make sure your foot's not loose in there. And then you're going to wrap the right string around the left and pull it tight. And make sure it is tight, otherwise your foot's going to be sliding around in your shoe. And then you're going to, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to take my right hand, create a loop with that lace, take my left hand, pull the lace around my loop. Taking my right hand, I'm going to pull a little piece of the left shoelace through the loop that I just created and pull it tight. And then you just tied your shoe.
Okay. If you could choose one superhero power, what would it be and why?
I would choose flight or teleportation. I do live far away from my family, and this would allow me to go home more often because flights are expensive, and I know that I can't afford to fly home as often as I would. And I do only go over Christmas and during the summer. So if I was able to teleport, I could honestly go back anytime I wanted. Like for my mom and my dad's birthdays or Thanksgiving, Mother's Day, Father's Day. Yeah, just something that would help me see my family.
All right, well, that was all of my questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. So I am Marissa Chapin, and I will be interviewing Catherine Barnett for a job at our skilled nursing facility for an SLP position. Why do you think you would be a good fit for our company?
I think I would be a great fit for your company because I'm a hard worker, really detail oriented. I work great on a team, and I have a passion to help rehabilitate patients with communication disorders.
Okay. What do you feel are your strengths and your weaknesses?
I think my strengths are that I can handle a fast-paced setting with a high caseload. I have previous experience in the field and strive to do my best when evaluating and treating every patient. My weaknesses are that I have a hard time with time management and need to work on completing timely documentation and completing reports at work instead of bringing them home.
Okay. Give me an example of a time that you felt you went above and beyond the call of duty at work.
I feel as though I always go above and beyond the call of duty at work, but if I had to choose one instance, I think I would say when I planned and implemented treatment with ASD clients. I created visual schedules and no-tech AAC devices and incorporated another client's device into the session's activities. So it was a group session, and there were 3 children who all had devices, and we all just worked together on a certain activity. So.
And what salary are you seeking?
I'm not necessarily seeking a specific salary, but I would definitely like a fair salary for a new graduate at your facility.
Okay. And what is your salary history?
Well, I worked in the public school system before as an SLPA, so the pay scale is different for that job than at your facility with a master's degree. I have never worked as a certified SLP with a master's degree before, so my previous salary history is not really comparable to what you guys have here.
Okay, understandable. And how do you want to improve yourself within the next year?
I want to gain more on the job experience in the field by working as an SLP to become a better therapist to my clients.
What personality do you work with best and why?
I can honestly work with any personality, but if I had to choose one type, I think I would say someone who is level-headed, non-confrontational, and approachable.
Okay. What techniques and tools do you use to keep yourself organized?
I have a personal planner that I put all of my due dates into. I keep a running list of items that I need to get done. I try to keep a clean workspace and implement an organization system with paperwork as well.
What's the most difficult decision you've made in the last 2 years, and how did you come to that decision?
If I had to pick one instance, I guess I would say deciding to discontinue services for a client who was not benefiting from therapy. It was really hard because the client's health was rapidly declining, and ultimately the family ended up deciding to put the client on hospice shortly after the services were discontinued. So it was an appropriate decision, but it was a really hard one to make.
Yeah, I understand that. What kind of goals would you have in mind if you got this job?
My goals would be to be the best SLP I can be for my patients. I would like to collaborate with other professionals on the patient's care plan team to optimize patient progress. And I would also like to educate staff members about what the scope of practice for an SLP is, because I feel like a lot of times people don't know what we do, and I would like to make sure everybody knows.
I agree. What do you see yourself doing within the first 30 days of this job?
I see myself providing services of evaluations and treatment to the clients on my caseload with EBP within the first 30 days. And then I would also like to establish myself at the site by introducing myself to all the staff and collaborating with them to better treat the patients.
And then if selected for this position, can you describe your strategy for the first 90 days?
For the first 90 days, I would focus on creating an optimal schedule and evaluate as well as treat all patients on my caseload with EVP. I would also like to implement some in-service presentations to educate the staff on the role of an SLP at their setting and any areas of my scope of practice that I would like to clarify, and then more education on specific disorders and treatment that are needed at my site.
Okay. If you were an animal, which one would you be?
I think I would be a dog just because they are trustworthy and have high energy to get things done, and then they are comforting and loyal to others.
Okay. If you could choose one superhero power, what would it be and why?
I think I would want to have the ability to slow down time. I don't think there's enough time in a day to work and enjoy our personal lives. And if time was slowed down, we could do our best work at our jobs and also spend more time with family and friends.
Okay. And then do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, actually, what is the most important component of the job that you would like me to focus on first if I am hired?
As you stated in my previous question, that you were going to set up your schedule as quickly as possible, which I do feel like is something that needs to be focused on immediately. I also would like you to hopefully come in and get your license as soon as possible. If you haven't already filled out and gotten your SLP license with your CEAS. And then, so we need your state license, your ASHA license, and then for you to start your schedule as soon as possible.
Okay, that sounds good.
Those are all the questions I have for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.